think I mentioned a few things about Carter, but
We're live.
yeah, I'm having trouble piecing this together. They impeached Nixon in 74. That brought on Spiro Agnew, who was vice president. But maybe that was temporary, and then they brought in Ford. But Ford was president for a while, but here in 76 he loses to Carter. So I'm a little bit confused. How did Ford get to be president then? He was president for. I recall distinctly that Agnew came in after to take Nixon's place. And he was a piece of work.
I don't know why this isn't. Oops. Sorry, doesn't want to scroll.
Pretty tight race.
Yeah, and then we have the Watergate and the impeachment.
Was brought on Agnew, right? So when was Ford president? Oh, I just did.
26. Or maybe you're thinking Nixon got. No.
Nixon was the one that got impeached.
So,
They
well, it
brought
says
on Agnew.
he was he was resigned and replaced by Vice President Ford.
He resigned in order to avoid impeachment. So then what?
He was replaced by Ford.
I thought it was Spiro P. Agnew. What do you got for Agnew?
Says he was just a former vice president.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So when Nixon resigned, that brings on Agnew, no? Or maybe it doesn't work that way. Anyway, we're probably overanalyzing this business. I mean,
well, it says he resigned in 73 also.
Oh, they stirred some scandal. Yeah. So Ford, in essence, was only in there for a year, but long enough to bring on the neocons and get them established. So you're back on 72 now.
I was looking for Ford and.
Yeah. So I guess that's Agnew also resigned. So
yeah.
Yeah. Call that political instability.
So now we're on the 1980. We kind of discussed Reagan. Similar figure to Trump. Correct?
Yeah.
And did really well.
So, yeah, they savaged him on the, I think I mentioned that in the 76 campaign, he had promised to slash the military budget. Well, he didn't do that. And then these neocons got him involved in overthrowing the government in in Afghanistan. So they were funding the Mujahideen and the other terrorist groups to the tune of over $1 billion. I confronted Noam Chomsky around that time at Ohio State. He was saying that the U.S. has abandoned the freedom fighters fighting against Soviet occupation in Afghanistan. Well, there was no Soviet occupation. The government had begged it for help and support and surrounded by reactionary Zia dictatorship in Pakistan and China and all the reactionary states. And so the Saudis were putting in $1 billion. The U.S. was putting in over $1 billion, and Brezhnev bragged about it later. But at the time, they people like Chomsky were saying that U.S. has abandoned these freedom fighters fighting against Soviet imperialism, and they're fighting with rusted muskets and pitchforks and so on and so forth. He rolled this whole. He's a deep state asset. Okay, guaranteed. I can take you chapter and verse through Noam Chomsky. So why is he the godfather of the left? Because they control both sides. It's not the real left, of course, but it's the left that he's the far left. CNN is the anyway. Anyway, so Carter was twisted around by the neocons, and so he didn't cut the military budget, he increased it, and got us heavily involved in the Contra war in Afghanistan. Horrible thing. I could talk for an hour about that. Heroic government of the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, who had suffered under U.S.-backed dictators, for years, and they stormed the prisons in Kabul, liberated the political prisoners, and they went on to radically change the situation for women. And that had been under the veil and the bride price, and well, not so much the veil in Afghanistan, not after the 70s, but they still had in the countryside, these persecution of women, weren't allowed to get educated. So these Mujahideen, these terrorists would assassinate these young teachers, that often women, that were sent out to the countryside for the literacy programs and so forth. These are cutthroat terrorists supported by the United States. And they had stingers, and they had electronic surveillance, satellite surveillance from the U.S. So they were knocking down Soviet supply to Afghanistan. I won't go through it all, but just another dirty chapter of American imperialism. But Brezhnev later said it was the greatest success that the world has ever seen. Of course, then later, when Soviet Union was actually collapsed, that became the greatest moment of the world history. So anyway, where are we here? Carter and Reagan. Yeah, so I told you yesterday, but they embarrassed him over these hostage taking in Tehran, where they kept these CIA agents for several months, and didn't mistreat them, though. They were making statements and things like that. But Reagan sent his people there to ensure that the hostages would not be released before the election. I already covered that, I guess. So, this is politics, what they call politics in the United States. What do we got?
So
You
84,
got
we
any
have
comment?
Reagan again.
Yeah, he was so popular,
Mondale
such a,
won one state.
yeah, Mondale was actually pretty good, a pretty good man, honest man. So naturally, the public chose the B actor. Howdy doody.
Says Reagan received 525 electoral votes, 54 million popular votes. And this is the electoral vote is the record that still stands to this day.
Yeah.
So this is the biggest ass whooping.
Yeah, that's well, I still think McGovern might have been worse, but we won't quibble about that. What do we got next? After Reagan, we got wait a minute. After Reagan, we got well, it's the Democrats' turn. So
Bush Senior.
oh, okay, yeah. Well, this is a refresher course. I've forgotten some of our history. Dukakis out of oh, they raked him over the coals. He was out of Massachusetts, and they kept saying that he let rapists out of prison. This law and order that Nixon and Reagan had campaigned on, tough laws and so forth. Dukakis supposedly, I don't know the facts of the case, gave a pardon or an early release to a guy that went on to commit terrible crimes, a black guy, of course. So that played just about every day on the news. That's real news, kind of like it's an anecdotal thing, and So I guess he was for liberal, so he may have had a tendency to release prisoners a little early for whatever, but I don't know the facts of the case, but that doesn't really matter. It's the way they play the race card and the law and the order card. The police kill far more people than the criminals. Yeah, you look up the statistics. Kill 9 or 10 people a day. So that's law and order for. It doesn't really matter, but they manipulate the public. So they got 3 strikes and you're out. Who brought that on? That was.
Wasn't that Clinton?
Yeah. It's the guy I was trying to think of. Yeah, 3 strikes and you're out, and so you get 2 counts of marijuana and 1 count of I don't know, parking violation wouldn't qualify, I guess. But
Driving
anyway,
license.
Yeah, let's move on to
Driving on expired tags.
yeah, something like that.
But it's down here on the issues of the day. It says the Iran-Contras. That's still on people's minds.
Yeah, because the story didn't break back in the Reagan years. Well, I think it had sort of by the there had been some talk on conspiracy sites, but it didn't break into the open until there was some confessions and this and that. You might want to read about it. real quick for our audience and for my benefit, because I don't know all the details. But yeah, it had broken. The story had hit the news around this time. Lloyd Benson, yeah, I remember him. You got to have that regional balance.
So it was a political scandal in the United States that centered around the revelation that senior officials in the Reagan administration secretly facilitated the sale of arms to Iran from 81 to 86. As Iran was subject to an arms embargo at the time of the scandal, the sale of arms was deemed illegal. The administration hoped to use the proceeds of the arms sale to fund the Contras, an anti-Sandinista rebel group in Nicaragua, under the Boland Amendment. Further funding of the Contras by
Yeah,
legislative
that's why they couldn't do it openly.
further funding of the Contras by legislative appropriations was prohibited by Congress, but the Reagan administration figured out a loophole by secretly using non-appropriated funds instead. The administration's justification for the arms shipments was that they were part of an operation to free 7 U.S. hostages being held in Lebanon by Hezbollah.
Wait a minute here.
Yeah.
Read that last part again.
The administration's justification for the arms shipments was that they were part of an operation to free 7 U.S. hostages being held in Lebanon by Hezbollah, an Islamist group with ties to Iran. Yeah, I definitely thought they were in Iran, but it's interesting. The idea to exchange arms for hostages was proposed by Manuker Gorbachev,
Very good.
an
You're going to
expatriate
take 5 minutes to say the guy's name, doesn't even matter. Go ahead.
an expatriate Iranian arms dealer. Some within the Reagan administration hoped the sales would influence Iran to get Hezbollah to release the hostages. Hezbollah must have just been created because, I think in the late 80s is when Israel had invaded Lebanon.
Late 80s? No, I think it might have been 82.
Okay, you think so? Yeah, you're right. It was founded in 1982 in response to Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Anyway.
So anyway, it's a complicated scandal, and so it's over my head, and you can imagine how far it went over the head of our electorate. So what do we got next? Oh well, George Bush. What can we say about George Bush?
CIA?
Yeah, he was a longtime CIA. He was in Dallas when they took out Kennedy and lied about it. Actually made a phone call saying he was in a different state when he was in Dallas. So why would you do that? Except to provide an alibi, but he was photographed there and so on and so forth. So anyway, another great guy. And what do we got next?
92. Clinton beats Bush.
Yeah, how close was that?
Not very close.
No, it wasn't. What does it say were the main issues?
Oh, dang, look at Ross Perot. He got almost 20 million votes.
Oh, yeah, and he would have drawn from, I voted for him. He would have drawn from Bush.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's probably why he would probably played the spoiler there. He was a millionaire businessman, but kind of a common sense type guy, and and somewhat independent supposedly, and definitely not part of the Washington crowd. So he had some appeal, kind of a folksy, straight talking guy. You measure twice and cut once. So the Gulf War, yeah, was it? Uh, was that 91 or?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, so Bush didn't get credit for the fall of the Berlin Wall and the breakup of the Soviet Union. Well, they give most of the credit to Reagan's policies, but evidently Bush was in office when that was happening. But they mention a recession, so it's the economy, stupid.
The Gulf War was from 1990 to 91.
Okay. So I guess that wasn't so popular and may have contributed. No, yeah, okay.
To his loss.
Yeah, that was the Perot factor there. He got 19 million bucks. Didn't hear much from him after that. He chose a real dud for vice president. A retired general. What was his name? Man, he reminds me of Kamala Harris. He couldn't answer a fucking question if his life depended on it. And in one of the interviews or debates, he actually said, "I don't really know why I'm here."
Who are you talking about?
His vice president, General
Perot or Bush?
Perot's vice president pick was a bad pick. He wanted, a military guy, and I mean, this guy talked like but he had no grasp of any of the issues, and he actually said, "I don't really know why I'm here." It was a vice presidential debate. So Bush's vice president, Clinton's. Or I
Yes,
mean,
it's
yeah,
Admiral Stockdale.
yeah.
His famous line was, "Who am I? Why am I here?" That sounds
Yeah,
like Biden.
Jesus Christ, that was a cringe moment for Ross. He got of all the people you could pick,
Yeah.
he didn't want a politician type, I guess, and he wanted the military. He wanted the military angle. Anyway, too bad for Ross. He could have done even better. But he played the spoiler there.
And then this is Clinton is when he starts with the famous Oslo Accords. This is later.
Yeah.
They don't have that on here. And then we have Clinton in again.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. Uh, Trying to think, one of Dole's key advisors or campaign manager, which was it? Anyway, came out for 9/11 Truth. Trying to think of his name. But not Dole himself, but somebody high up in his campaign. I think might have been his campaign manager. I'll have to check that. So you don't see that kind of thing too often.
And Perot ran again.
Yeah, got a few less. I can't remember who he had this vice president selection that time, but I'm sure he did a little better than the general. So Clinton won fairly handily over Bob Dole. He's kind of colorless politician.
Yeah, and now we have some more terrorism.
Waco standoff. Yeah, all those people were killed by the feds, not by the religious. What is the name? Religious leader, and he killed kids and everything.
What was the deal there?
At Waco?
Yeah.
Oh, they wanted to create a big scandal, so they raided this. It reminds me a little bit of what they did down in Guyana with what was that
Jim
called? Huh?
Jim Jones and
Yeah, Jonestown. Yeah, so they wanted to create some kind of a a news item in there, well, more than a news item. Plenty of falderall around that, but it was a tragedy because they had a couple. There was no child molestation going on there. All of it was fictitious, but the guy was considered a bit of a renegade. He had his own church and following, similar to Jim Jones. So
yeah,
they showed up, and before anything else, they filled the house with gas, and then the people were coming out, and they claimed that a couple of the members had guns, but that was never proven, and they shot a bunch of people down. It's a government massacre, but then they played it like these are dangerous radical types. They did something similar to out in Utah to kind of a split off from the Mormons that stuck to polygamy and that sort of thing, and refused to go to the public schools. And so you can't have that kind of nonconformity, So they raided them, and a couple of people were killed. But this is even a bigger deal. I forget how many people died there in Waco.
It says 86 people died because of the extensive fire.
Yeah, they burned them alive, This is called freedom and democracy.
And then were you talking about the Ruby Ridge standoff?
No,
Another
that was
one?
different. They shot that guy down with some snipers, accused him of being a right-wing militant. And I don't know all the details on that. No, I was talking about somewhat later. We're talking in maybe even the early 2000s, where they raided these Mormon. We might call them Mormon fundamentalists. communities, and people were killed for no reason. They weren't sending their kids to schools. They wanted to enforce the truancy. Yeah, truancy. Yeah, compulsory education, such a progressive thing, so great. Why? Because they want to brainwash everybody. You don't get to have your own, we can't have a country with everybody doing their own thing. We got to have a conformism and compliance and obedience. And the best place to teach that is in the schools. People aren't going to school. We don't know what they're doing. It could be up to anything.
That's kind of true. My neighbors on the corner, they're two teenagers. Neither of them go to school. I know their parents have been in trouble with, truancy and everything. But I really don't know what they do all day, Just, it does kind of seem, I don't know, they're just kind of running around. He's got like a motorbike. He rides that around like in circles.
You're not talking right next door. Your immediate neighbors?
No, like two down.
Oh, okay.
Well,
yeah, I mean that's the only. It's a daycare situation, and that's about all it's worth.
I'm just saying they're not getting homeschooled or anything either. They're just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's not too good. But they probably their parents probably shouldn't be shot for it.
No, not at all.
I don't know. They took the kids and put them in asylum situations, or I'll have to review that. I think it was not that long ago, early 2000s.
Yeah. Well, anyway, here in Wikipedia it says that the Ruby Ridge standoff, Waco siege, were cited by Timothy McVeigh as the main reasons for his and Terry Nichols' plan for Oklahoma City bombing.
Huh. That never happened. The feds plan. No, I mean, even that CIA guy mentioned that the other day. Then, there's no way. Okay, look, it's kind of like Building 7. The story is a van parked out at the street. I can't remember how many yards, at least 30, 40 yards from the front of the building. A van full of fertilizer explodes and then knocks the fucking building down. No, if you believe that, okay, I've got properties to sell you down in the swamplands, and I'm talking cheap. Jesus Christ!
Wait, so
the whole goddamn thing was an FBI thing.
So
they planted
Oklahoma
bombs
City,
in the building. There was witnesses, police officers. Immediately subsequent, they said bombs were planted in the buildings, and they're trying to defuse a third bomb in the building. And the story is this goddamn, come on, shit. I mean, but people will believe anything. It's on the news.
So that building collapsed?
It's on the news first, and then if you question it, you're a conspiracist. It's that simple.
Did you hear my question?
No.
Did that building collapse? Is that what you're saying? I just never looked into the Oklahoma too well. Or you're talking about
tremendous, not collapse, but big part of it was blown out, and
okay.
Very odd though. If you look at the X number of victims, you can't find them in the death registry or the funeral directories or the what do they call it? Where they have tributes to the dead or anything. Death register, no, you can't find it. Okay. So likely, supposedly X number of children were killed, to make it graphic.
Yeah.
But if you just get to the explosion, but McVeigh was some kind of asset. He had been in the military in the sort of intel side of things. He's likely sheep dipped and he's living somewhere now. You can't believe a goddamn. If it's on the news, it's fake. Let me just keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that was big, big news. But we talked about the left and the far left and the Marxist left. All of them just breathed a deep sigh of relief because this McVeigh was a right wing. You see, that's how it works. They're not going to question that. Oh, hell yes. And then when 9/11 happens, oh, well, we're not Muslims and we're not terrorists. God damn, deep sigh of relief. They're not even thinking to question what happened. They just happy that it's not going to be used against them. That the police state on steroids will not be coming after them, coming after, in that case, the Muslims. In the other case, these right-wing, what do they call them? These right-wing militia groups were flourishing in some parts. So they said that, in the Carolinas and around, they did have militia groups. They weren't shooting up anybody, but they were preppers and they were training and target practice and all that, and they thought that was a threat. So that's why McVeigh was said to be a part of one of the militia groups, right-wing extremist. So that's how it works. And then they rolled out draconian measures, and of course doubled the security forces and all that. It was an inside job, obvious inside job.
Okay, well, 2000, that's a big one.
That's Obama. No. Let me tell you, that's Bush Jr. He was groomed. He had to win. That's why they just outright cheated him.
In Florida, right?
Gore in Florida.
Yeah.
Blatant. They had the hanging chads on the computer, the old-fashioned IBM computer cards and punch cards, and the thing was so close. They had Bush up by I don't know 17,000 maybe in something like that in the state of Florida. Well, that was close enough so they have the right to demand a recount. It's within 1% or something. And so they commenced the poll workers commenced to counting the ballots by hand. Can you imagine? Instead of the computer thing. And they had about 20% of the votes hand counted, and Bush wasn't up by 17, or maybe it was more on the original 20,000, something like that. He was up by about 300.
Yeah.
After 20% of the ballots were. So anyway, make a long story short, the Supreme Court, in their wisdom, declared that the country needs to move on. This is their judicial decision. The country needs to move on. And they sent the goons, the Republicans sent goons to threaten the poll workers, crash in their doors, the thugs, to try to intimidate them. But they didn't really need to do that because the Supreme Judicial Body decided. I haven't read the actual decision, but there's no justification for it. They just said the country needs to heal and move on. Anyway, make a long story short, the Miami Herald, neither a Republican or Democrat, got a hold through Freedom of Information Act, but this is long after it's the fact, and Bush, after Bush had carried out 9/11 and all that. That's why he had to go into the office. He had already been, privy to that. But the thing is, they got a hold of the ballots finally. This is, I forget how many years later. Al Gore won by over 200,000 votes in the state of Florida. 200,000 votes.
Yeah. Yeah, the final count, they have
Nobody knows that.
They have him up by 5.
Because the fucking media is controlled. And you see all these people now. I just watched a great, with Tucker Carlson, this guy that's been investigating January 6th and the pipe bombs and all this stuff. The whole thing was a federal carried out by the feds, obviously, It's they had over 200 plainclothes people and part of the crowd and everything, and there was whole thing was a sham, okay? But then they get into the partisanship. People never learn. So they were scratching their head. Why doesn't Johnson? He's a Republican, actually a Trump Republican, and he's refusing to release hundreds of videos that he apparently has power to have released, which of course show that the whole goddamn thing was a farce. But they're playing innocent. We can't understand why he wouldn't, but it's all about Republican and Democrat. It's like you're watching. Look, it's like you're watching a prize fight. You're watching Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Okay, they battle in the jungle, whatever they call it. Big fight. Fifth round or so, they're pounding each other. Okay. Ali knocks his Foreman's mouthpiece out into the crowd. Everybody's cheering. Foreman's fighting back. He's tough. He's working the body. He's getting in some punches. It's a fight. The fight is on. And your wife sitting next to you, you paid $250 for goddamn seats. She said, I'm bored. I'm bored. You said we could go to the restaurant. Come on. Are you crazy? And this is the attitude of these people. They get wrapped every time, even the off 2-year elections and so on. Every time. And it will be the same way 100 years from now, because that's the whole point. The whole point is to create the partisanship. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. If you don't understand the uniparty, you don't understand anything. The last genuine election was the McGovern one that we talked about. but they simply ruined him with not too much effort. But no, today, since Florida now, they passed the Help America Vote Act, X billions of dollars to put the voting machine, the touch screen, Help America Vote. These things can be rigged to the touch of a button. You just go to black box voting. She's done and all her computer experts and investigators have show it to you right there. Punch a button in the back of the goddamn thing and flip the vote. You don't even need a pass code or a key or nothing. Look, it's not helping America. It's a fail-safe system. Okay? I don't know if they stole Trump's second term or not. Probably did.
Yeah, I think so.
But if they want to do it, they can do it. So if you can't beat them with the propaganda and the partisanship and all the falderall, all the bullshit, and all the money, and you still need to get one or the other, which of course they've both been vetted. But if you really need to get like they did in 2000, they needed Bush because Gore probably wasn't in the loop. 9/11's obviously already planned.
Yeah.
And Bush was privy. So anyway, in that case, it was messy. Kind of like when they took out Kennedy, it was messy. Blood all over the place. Yet we don't need to do that with things in that manner anymore. We're sophisticated.
Yeah.
But no, there's not going to be any difference whatsoever going forward between the two parties. They're both monopoly capitalist parties. Yes, do the monopoly capitalist ruling class sometimes have differences? Yes, they do. Some are more oriented towards China. Some are more oriented towards the domestic market. Some are more into the finance, and some are more into actual product, and so on. They may have differences. They can sort them out. There's too much at stake. They all understand that. You don't throw the thing open to the fucking pub, the hoi polloi, and the peons to make the goddamn decisions. We're talking about a empire that's taken centuries to build. You don't put it all on the whims of the electorate.
Yeah.
That's irresponsible.
So I just heard this figure the other day that in the 2024 election was the most ever spent. Of course, obviously it goes up, but they spent $16 billion on advertising.
16 billion?
Yeah, that kind of surprised me. Imagine what you could do with that money.
Yeah. Yeah, they passed this law called Citizens United. And Greenwald, who's a lefty, and was pointing out all the corruption of the money in politics. He says, I did support Citizens United on the basis of the First Amendment. Fuck you, man. You see, that's the loophole in liberal democracy. Money rules. So they had passed in the 70s, there was a campaign to control campaign finances. So they put limits. But that was a violation of the First Amendment. You see, the First Amendment is about freedom. Whose freedom? The freedom to get your elections bought from you? So, that word really needs to be parsed. Yeah. You there?
Yep.
I need to get a cigarette. I'm getting myself worked up. Can you imagine? Over electoral politics of all things. And I'm just saying, I won't say they don't matter. That you can see some things behind the curtains and how it plays out and so on, or the themes on the both sides. But
Well, I don't
no,
know.
the ruling class is sophisticated, mature. What we have is a mature ruling class. If they have differences, then they negotiate. You don't negotiate with Russia or China unless you're just lying through your teeth like they always do. Who would want to negotiate with the United States? Well, they got all the guns, so you try, but it's useless. But as far as internally, yeah, they have a very mature attitude. You take the World Economic Forum or any of these Davos or whatever it is, they're people from both parties and the third parties and everything else. I mean, they're not partisan. The partisanship is for the peons. That they are extras in the show. I need to get a cigarette.
Okay, I can stop the recording, I think. Maybe we can restart it. We'll see.
I'm getting myself worked up here.
We're
I need
learning.
a cigarette. I'll be
All
right
right.
back.